I suspect that the sight of their warship being towed by a Federation runabout took the heart out of their fight.
We're not done with the Cardassians yet. Not with the strategic importance of that wormhole.
Well, you've put Bajor on the map, Commander. This will shortly become a leading center of commerce and of scientific exploration. And for Starfleet, one of our most important posts.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Sloppy Modeler and continuing work on the USS Rio Grande from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And we're going to talk in this first half of update number 2. We're going to talk at length about the lighting and what we've accomplished so far. Using we in the royal sense, of course, so it is just me going at it. So essentially what you've got here is the bottom of the hull, and this is just a temporary line. I'm going to essentially demonstrate all the different lighting and how I went about it in order to produce a lit kit. And so this is just all the preliminary work to get started. So the first thing, of course, really bright is the lights for the interior windows. So we're going to have the back windows, the two sides, the two sets of ovals, and then the two cockpit windows here, and that should provide a significant amount of light without too many hot spots. I don't think there'll be hot spots on this one. One of the goals for this kit for me has been to really eliminate hotspot lighting, and I'll show you what I've done in several instances to hopefully eliminate a significant amount of that. So that is the base of the hull, and so for right now that's got its light strips put in, and we are off and running there. Here is the kit for the wings, and essentially what you're going to have in here are the impulse engines. So the key, we'll get all this lit up. So, a couple of things that I was working with, trying to get accomplished. I always grab the wrong one, so here's the right one. Still the wrong one. So, one of the things that I wanted to accomplish here was to just give a solid red for that impulse engine. So, as I said, this has been light blocked in here. It's a solid red. It doesn't have any hot spots in person. I'm not even sure if the camera's picking up any, but that is a solid red. So what I've done again at length here is I put two red LEDs in here against a white piece of styrene, and I had 2 or 3 thicknesses in it, and with this close to it, the white styrene really worked well, and so that gave me a nice look on the back of that. On the front, where that's lit up, I tried using the super white styrene, but that gave me that didn't give me enough light coming through. So when I tried that, it really dulled that down far too much. So I didn't have enough light coming through. But by the time I got these put in here, again, eliminating as many of those hot spots. And when these lights go out, you can see that it's just going to be a really nice white behind there when it's all said and done. So you can see that white that's there now. And then, like I said, when you get it lit up, you'll see that that just gives us a really nice glow, rather than hot spots in there. So that is the wings, and both sides have been done in the identical fashion. So putting in the red LEDs in the back and the orange LEDs in the front. And then I use that clear background on the white tape. That gives me a little bit of diffusion, and it gives me enough on the front that it's just black when it's lit up, and especially behind that cap that's going to go on the front of that. Now I have pre-painted the back of this with the sky gray is what I finally ended up going with from Tamiya. Nothing else was looking good for a base coat. So that has been pre-coated, and then we'll start painting in the blues and things of that nature. So those are the wings, and as I said, both of those are identical. And you know what, I'm not sure, not that one. Let's get to the other wing. And let's cover it up. So here's the other wing. And we'll light this one up and show you the other side with its cover on. And let's go like so. So now, oh, always the wrong one. Always the wrong one. Left and right are challenging. I am really, really pleased with the way that turned out. By capping that, you get a lot more direct orange into that wing as it's going to sit there, and it caps off the red really quite nicely for the back impulse engine. And again, let's close that up, and then we'll add the back. And so in person, that red is absolutely spot on. So it is the red impulse engine, which will be lit up from the back. So those are the impulse engines in the wings, lit and ready to again continue on the painting process as we go. So those are the two wing sides. On the nacelles, and the nacelles are a three-piece project here. So the nacelles have 3 circuits in them, unfortunately. So one circuit is the nav light in the front. Another circuit is the Bassard collector and the chiller grills, blue on each side, and those have been painted blue. And then one circuit for the anti-collision light in the back, the white light. So let's see if we can get this one lit up and show you what occurred there. And I think I've taken some photos of this. Let's get all my greens aligned here. So I've taken a few still photos of the interior of this because it was far too challenging to do it while I was producing the lighting system for it. And then maybe we're good here. Again, I do apologize for the... There we go. Oh, come on. Play nice. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, essentially what I did here is I took a piece of real thick styrene and wedged it into the front of that Bassard collector. So in person, that is just red, and it's a dull red, and it looks absolutely awesome when it's turned off, and it looks fantastic when it's lit up. In addition, on the back of the Bassard on the back of the chiller grills, I wedged in a piece of styrene between it and the light strips that's there on both sides. So that eliminated the significant amount of the hot spots. So it's just one chiller grill as we went. Light blocked the red nav light, so it's not coming through here on this side. And then the anti-collision light is lit up. And so both of those are done from the lighting side. So both nacelles are done and now ready to start painting. So the next step on that would be to paint like these pads here, paint the phaser array on the top and bottom, and then paint in the yellow, and then do the base coat, paint that according to the box cover. So those are both of the nacelles are completed, and you can see that those are done on both sides and ready to go forward. And then here is the little particular piece of nastiness, but on wiring on the inside, but I think it's going to look cool when we're all said and done. The first thing to do was include or switch in the, I believe these are the thrusters. Yep. Alright, so the thrusters are these 4 holes, one on each side and one in the back. So those 4 thrusters light up, and the way I did that is I built a little light box here and then ran the LED inside of there, and I'll light block this inside so that yellow is covered up. I haven't light blocked this piece yet, but that's done. So the thrusters are in place. Both sides of the thrusters are in place. And then this just needs a little bit of light blocking, and that will be ready to go. So that's the thrusters. Secondarily is the warp core, or I'm going to do a little bit of research. I'm not sure if that's the warp core. Oh, don't do that. I'm not sure if that's the warp core or if it is the impulse engine crystal. So once I look up some of that technical information on the this, I'll decide which way to switch it and work through it. So what we've got here from the top side, this is covered in tape where that crystal is, and then you've got the 4 bright red lights from the side, 2 there and 2 on that side. So you've got these 4 lights here, and then I can actually see that crystal lit up through the tape. So I know that that's going to be bright enough to light up once I get paint on there, because that's been light blocked underneath. And so that is the crystal, whether it's the warp core crystal or the impulse crystal, will determine if I light it with the Bussards and the warp chiller drills, or whether I light it with the impulse crystal, these 4 reds, and then the wings, the impulse wings. So I have to do a little research to see which lights are on during which event, whether they're at warp or whether they're under impulse. But those are ready to wire in and switch. Additionally, I put in, from a lighting perspective, the anti-nav or our anti-collision blinking light. So this doesn't have the circuit in, of course, yet. That'll be put in the base. But that circuit, that'll blink just like I did on both the TOS Cylon Raider and on the TOS the Viper from Battlestar Galactica. But that'll blink, and then also the 2 nacelles will blink. So those will fire up. And then this will be lit up in white, this will be lit up in white. So that anti-collision light is in and done. And then finally, let me just get my bearings here. The last 2 lights oh, that's the impulse crystal. Okay, the final 2 lights are here, and I guess I didn't put those in any particular order. Let's move those. Oh, maybe I did already. Yeah, so that's red there. And let's see where the green goes to. Again, sorry for the delays here during filming, folks, but the nav lights in the back. So the nav lights are really nice bright red and bright green here on the back of that. They've been light blocked when I did the interior piece. Again, but you can see, maybe you can't, but in here I'm going to have to light block that from the bottom, and I'll put some really dark black paint. For my light blocking on the inside, I found couldn't find tulip at my local Hobby Lobby, so I just went with this 3D fabric paint. It's very thick and it's shiny black, and it goes in and it goes exactly where you put it. It can glob it up, and that works absolutely perfect for light blocking Again, that is Scribbles 3D Fabric Paint. So I've been using that for light blocking. Now, a couple of things on the lighting that I really tried hard with. Again, as I mentioned, eliminating hot spots, and I did that with a lot more styrene and blocking than I did before. The other thing that I took particularly notice of, the last couple lights I've done, I've noticed that my green lighting, when I use the same level resistor for, say, the same bulb, the green was always so much dimmer than the red. And same thing with the yellow on the thrusters. And so I don't know if it's the wavelength of the light that causes that or what the particular issue is. So in both the nacelles and in the wings, where I used, or in the nacelles where I used green, and this green nav light, I used a much lower level resistor. And since this is on a 5-volt system, the resistors I used, I think I used 120 ohms for the greens and maybe 250 ohms for the reds. And like I said, when those came together, they look about the same level of luminosity, or the same level of brightness for both the red and the green. So I don't have two different levels where this is really dim and this is really bright. So that's been taken care of. Same thing on these reds. They were a much, again, about the 250 ohm, the same as the nav. And then this, I think I really wanted bright, so I went down to like a 120 ohm on the impulse crystal. And then the rest is light strip. So the Rio Grande is coming along. So now that the lighting is in, and I can decide where to go next is with paint. And what I'll do is I'll start painting in all of these details here. Since it's been primed, I'll start painting in a lot of the details like these panels, and paint in you know, this strip here and that strip there. Just start doing the detail painting on the hull, same thing on the base and on the nacelles. And then once a lot of that is ready for paint or painted, then I can come back to it and start marrying these up. And I think what I'm going to have to do when I marry these up is I'm going to have to work upside down. So I think I'm going to have to work upside down with first the nacelles into the wings, and then the wings onto here, and then the wiring into this, and I'll somehow deal with all the spaghetti wiring I've got going right there. However, I think that's the way to do this, rather than working from the inside out, work from the outside in, and then simply start closing that up as we go. And then the last thing we'll go on would be the base of the hull. So with that, I appreciate you tuning into this update number 2 of the Rio Grande from Star Trek. I'm having a lot of fun with the wiring. You can see all of my splatters from my soldering that I've done over the last couple of days. Again, trying to just pull all of that together and make that all of those wires stick and put together. I did work on a couple of things that were pretty challenging. 2 different types of solder that I used. Both of these I got at Hobby Lobby, and I was having a lot of trouble soldering to the light strip. And so when I went to solder to the light strip, I switched to the silver solder, and on those pads, positive and negative on those strips, that worked really nice. To solder the wire together, the magnet wire together, this has a rosin core built in, so it's 93.3 tin, copper, and then a rosin core, which helps with the cleaning and so forth. That seemed to work much better when I was soldering the magnet wire together. So magnet wire to the light strip, I used this WMSIL3 silver solder at Hobby Lobby. That's about $8 a piece. These are about $3 a piece, but one seemed to work better in particular issue. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with the second half of the update number 2 from the Sloppy Modeler, and we will catch you soon. Thank you. All right, hey, welcome back to the second half of part 2 of the
USS Rio Grande from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Just had to go to some of the stills here to work through the final set of the nacelles and how I put those together. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't have time to film these while I was looking at the working on it, and so I thought I'd take a few still photos and then talk about what I did here in the video. So the first thing that you have is the actual setting of the front lights. And I originally tried to do this with silly putty, just to put something in there to hold those two lights into the Bussard collectors. Well, the problem is with silly putty that it is it settles into its lowest common denominator, like water eventually, and I had a real mess in there. So I actually had to pull everything out, clean it, rewire two new red LEDs into the Bussard collectors, and then what you see there is I actually used clay to hold that in. So it's modeler's clay. It won't go anywhere. It's pretty dimensionally stable. It was fairly dry, and as it dries, it'll just harden and hold those in place a little better at this stage. And then we worked on setting the styrene insert into the Bussard collectors. And essentially, as I mentioned, I was working really hard to try and figure out how to keep from having so many hot spots in my lighting. So I had to do two things. One, I had to make a matte finish, and we'll talk about that in a minute, on the actual Bussard collector itself. And then I used a real 0.04 mil thick piece of styrene, and essentially, as you see in the photo there, put that around so that it just glued it in there, and it really diffuses the light pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with that. Speaking of diffusing the light, the other challenge, of course, using an LED strip light was the challenge of having all those hot spots along the chiller grills. So using kind of the same principle, I used a little bit thinner, I think 0.02 mil styrene, and got just two strips, and I wedged them into the clay and then also super glued them on the base, and lined both sides of the chiller grills with that styrene. And from the side, that really took a lot of the hot spots away and helped us out pretty dramatically. After that, had to work through the navigation lights, and as you can see here, we've got the green navigation light, and that is a separate circuit because that's going to have a circuit that's different from the Bussard collector and the warp chiller grill, and it's a separate circuit from the anti-collision light. So once we got that put in place and glued in, I actually light blocked it, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, and then we were able to have both the navigation and the anti-collision lights put in place for that. Finally, in addition, working on that Bussard collector, what I did there to diffuse the light or provide that matte finish, I took some 220 grit sandpaper on the inside of it, a little tiny piece because there's not much space in there. Took a little tiny piece of that and sanded the entire thing, and then blew the dust out. And then I took matte finish clear lacquer and just brushed that into there, and it gave me a really nice finish beyond just the scratches. That gave me a finish that provided just the right amount of diffusion for that Bussard collector. After that, the last thing that would go into that would be the LED strip tape. And the nice thing about the LED strip tape, one end I brought the power into it, and on the other end I was able to power up the Bussard collectors using that other end of the connectors. So I was able to wire the two Bussard collector red lights off of the light strip and glue all that down and put all that together. So in the end, I was really pleased with the way that the nacelles came together on the interior from a lighting perspective. I finally was able to remove a significant amount of the hot spots, and when it's turned off, that Bussard collector is clear, not painted red like so many models would be, but instead it lights up and it makes it, in my opinion, makes the model come to life when you're pulling that together. So with that, I think we'll close the second update of the Star Trek AMT Ertl Deep Space Nine Runabout. And again, I'm having a lot of fun building this and learning some new techniques for diffusing the light, and some new techniques for pulling all this wiring together. The next step is to move on to some primer and some additional painting now that the lights have been put in place. And for now, this is a Sloppy Modeler signing off on this update. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing and hitting the like button. That always helps me out. In addition, go ahead and hit that bell so you can get notified when these new updates come out. And most importantly, I hope you go out and enjoy building a model, because it is a lot of fun. Thanks.